One-time NXT Women's Champion, two-time WWE Divas Champion, ranked number one of the top 50 female wrestlers in the PWI Female 50 in 2014, and ranked number two in 2015. Today we're discussing a career that was unfortunately cut so short. Ladies, gentlemen, my non-binary friends, it is I, Josh Robinson, here for Love Wrestling, and today we're discussing the legacy of Paige. Technically wrestling since she was a fetus. Yes, I'm not kidding. Technically, Paige was a wrestler before she was even born. Her mum, of course, a wrestler in the UK wrestling scene, was wrestling when she was pregnant with Paige, but that's neither here nor there. Technically making her debut at just 13 years of age, it seemed to be in her blood, a family of wrestlers that just produced another wrestler. But there was something always a little different about Paige. Of course, she wrestled throughout the UK and European scene throughout the years from 2005 up until she got signed by WWE in 2011. There's been so many things documented about Paige that it's hard to really say anything that hasn't already been said. We do, of course, have a feature film about Paige out in the open, Fighting With My Family, which was, of course, produced and helped along by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You may have heard of him a couple of times. But there is a whole long list of stuff that happened after that movie, and of course, it's a feature film. There was some things that weren't technically correct, and we all know the story of Paige and how her career was ultimately cut very short. But in the very few years that she was actually signed by WWE and, of course, NXT, she did a lot of things. I think it's time to take a little deep dive into the career and legacy of Paige. Coming into FCW in 2011, she was kind of the weird, odd one out in that time. A very transitional time within the world of women's wrestling for WWE. We're right on the cusp of getting something really great with the WWE Divas division. There was starting to be a lot more different kind of women signed. Of course, we all know the story of the Divas division. It seems I talk about it in a lot in these legacy of videos, but it was all based more on looks than the actual in-ring talent, and weren't getting a lot of time to actually show what they could do in the ring, regardless of whether they could go or they couldn't. But Paige was kind of the first one to be ushered in. Of course, there was women before her, but Paige was the first one of that group, of that era in 2011. That was kind of brought in with a lot of wrestling experience. She was signed at just 19 years old, but she'd already been wrestling for all of her teenage life. And of course, growing up in the wrestling business, a wrestling family, of course, you just have it in your blood. It's in your veins. So Paige had a lot of experience in coming into a world where there was a lot of models and a lot of women who just weren't having a lot of experience in the ring. So Paige was already a veteran at just 19 years old in a world where a lot of women just weren't getting in a lot of reps on the independent scenes. But of course, you know that Bayley, Sasha, Becky, people like that would start to be signed, and Paige was really the first one. Of course, when NXT began in 2012, Paige was at the forefront of the women's division. For a long time, the NXT Women's Championship was not a thing in NXT. Of course, a tournament would be created, and Paige would be the first ever WWE NXT Women's Champion. And we knew there was something different about the way that the NXT women were presented as opposed to the main roster at the time. Now, of course, the Divas Championship was the number one and only women's championship that WWE had in 2012, but here's something different right off the bat. The NXT Women's Championship. It was not called the Divas Championship. Maybe whoever come up with the idea, or whether it was Triple H, whether it was whoever, there was something already different right there. They treated their women as less of a novelty and more of just a part of the pack of NXT talent. So, it's a good thing. Trust me, it's a good thing. Of course, we all know where that led to, but Paige was the first NXT Women's Champion in its history. Of course, that epic match at NXT Arrival on the very first WWE live show on the WWE Network in 2014. How crazy is that when you think about it? That NXT Arrival was the very first live experience on the WWE Network, which is now in the States on Peacock and making millions of dollars for the company. It's hard to think of a time where there wasn't network specials and there wasn't just the kind of plug of WWE Network or WWE on Peacock. But Paige would have this incredible match with Emma, a match that does not get talked about enough in what it did for women's wrestling. A lot of people look to NXT TakeOver and the kind of match between Charlotte and Natty is like, this is the first time I've really seen women go out there and just be given a lot of time and having a story to tell. Well, that's not really true, I don't think. There's a lot of matches before that took place, but I think really what was the seeds, what really was literally the seeds of the women's evolution of whatever you want to title it as, was Paige and Emma at NXT Arrival. Now, maybe Charlotte and Natty was the water that kind of grew those seeds, but I really do think that these were the literal seeds of what we were seeing now, and, you know, what led to moments like the first ever All-Women's Royal Rumble and the main event of WrestleMania 35 and 37. I really do think that this match and these women kind of did that, and I think Paige is a very big part of that. Paige was really positioned in this spot of, you're our next star. You're going to be our focal point. You're different. You have a different look. You have more of a wrestling background, but are still bringing in a lot of the qualities that WWE were looking for at the time. But we're in a changing world. And in 2014, of course, the night after WrestleMania 30, 296 days as Divas Champion was AJ Lee, and Paige would be the one in her debut to defeat AJ Lee and become the Divas Champion for the very first time. So you got to think, AJ Lee had essentially ran through an entire roster of ladies, an entire Divas division. Paige comes in on her first night, a huge reaction, and Paige is the WWE Divas Champion for the first time. Now, of course, like I said in the Legacy of Gail Kim video, it's hard to be a champion on your very first night and then just kind of navigate your way through a story, through feuds, and try to remain hot, kind of keep that momentum, because in wrestling, the chase is always better than the destination. However, Paige did navigate through. She would work with the likes of Alicia Fox, Naomi, and eventually would work with AJ Lee upon her return, and this is when Paige's career really ramped up. When she was able to work with AJ, of course would get the championship back, but not for very long before Paige would of course turn heel and kind of just flick this switch of what we were kind of expecting from Paige on the main roster. Become a great heel, work with AJ for a number of months. They would trade the championship back and forth. Of course, Paige would work with the likes of the Bella Twins over the years of 2014 and 2015, would work with Charlotte. PCB was at the forefront of the Divas revolution, the three-team battle between Team Bella, Team PCB, and Team Bad. Paige was really the one, after her really string of great matches with Nikki Bella and feuding with the Bella Twins, and the Bellas always using the numbers against Paige. Paige would kind of usher in the NXT talent. She was, of course, teamed with Becky and Charlotte. She would eventually turn on PCB. She would work with Charlotte. Now, while Paige didn't gather the WWE Divas Championship again in her career, it wasn't really too long after that Paige would unfortunately get injured for the first time and injure her neck and be out for over a year, from the years of 2016 until 2017. Neck injuries are always a really tough thing in this business. We know that. We've seen so many careers cut very short through neck injuries. I don't think we ever got one as young as Paige on a mainstream scale. I can't think of one. I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but Paige was 25 years old. That is so short, especially for someone with a career of Paige, what we've seen ahead. She was only on the main roster for 2 years. 2 years. That's it. That's all that Paige was on the main roster for. She did a lot. 3-time WWE Divas Champion. It's a pretty cool, impressive thing to say in just 2 years. And working with the top stars in the industry. And really, Paige was used as a person that got someone to the next level. If you look at her feud with Charlotte Flair's first feud after Nikki Bella, the Divas Championship. So she was really used as a person to say, hey, we're putting a lot of faith in you to get someone ready, to get someone where we want them to be. So it's pretty cool to say that Paige was that person. But Paige's career ultimately cut short here. This was the first neck injury that she'd have. She would return in 2017. She would lead a faction known as Absolution with Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose and kind of take in this new role. She would, of course, be a coach and a judge on Tough Enough in its revival in 2015 or 2016, and she did a lot of things in that aspect and kind of going through and mentoring a lot of people, I'm sure, but of course bringing in Sonya and Mandy, and it would look promising. It would kind of look like this new thing of, okay, Paige is in this new role, she's leading to brand new talent, and then unfortunately, this is where everything just kind of goes wrong again. Her first string of live events, coming back from a neck injury, everything was going fine, and was ultimately injured again, hurting her neck, and spines and necks are just something you can't really screw around with. You can't mess with this kind of stuff. And her career here was the last time that we'd ever see her in the ring. And a really unfortunate timing. I mean, not that any time is good to break your neck or have to go through all of that. However, first ever Women's Royal Rumble, first Women's Elimination Chamber, coming up to WrestleMania 34, where so much was going on for women in that time, and then Paige would ultimately have to announce her retirement the night after WrestleMania 34. The next night on SmackDown, she was announced as the new SmackDown General Manager. That was all going really well, and then that all changed, and Paige was off our television from the General Manager role. By the way, I just have to say, I think Paige was an absolutely fantastic GM. I think one of the better GMs, just fit that role so nicely. It was a shame that it only lasted as long as it did. It didn't really last all that long. Then we'd go on to manage the Kabuki Warriors of Asuka and Kairi Sane when they were doing their stuff, and Paige would kind of be fizzled out of that, and we haven't seen Paige on our screens, or sparingly, I mean, we haven't really seen Paige in anything since. She is still signed to WWE, she streams on Twitch, that's a whole nother story, but I would like to see Paige in another role. I truly don't believe that we've seen Paige wrestle for the final time. I do think we will see Paige wrestle again, whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I just think that bodies are an incredible thing, and we've thought we would never see Daniel Bryan wrestle again. We thought we would never see Edge wrestle again. So I do think there is an opportunity to see Paige wrestle at some point, somewhere down the line. I would like to see Paige wrestle again. It's probably one of the ones I have in my brain right now of like, this is someone I would like to see wrestle again. But I just wish I could see Paige on a more consistent basis on television. She is still a great talker. She obviously has name value and a presence that some people do not have. We did see her in WWE backstage. That also got cancelled. There's a lot of things that Paige has tried to kind of lend her hand in, and then for other reasons, they've just all stopped. I just really want to see Paige within the company again. She did so much throughout her time, as I just listed, throughout NXT and WWE, that I really would like to see Paige just somewhere. Manager, GM, some kind of authority figure, just something. I just want to see Paige utilized, because there's a lot there with Paige, and I think there's a lot more to give. Even if it can't mean taking bumps in the ring, there's other things that Paige can offer to the WWE or wrestling in general, wherever she decides that her talents can be utilized perfectly. I always talk about things to do outside of the business in these Legacy ofs, and I think Paige having that feature filmed created about her life already kind of put her in a little bit of a mainstream role. Like, hey, at least we know, hey, that's the person that her movie made about them. And, you know, her streaming on Twitch and doing other little things with her makeup line and music and whatever else that she decides to do does really help of creating something that your livelihood, your passion, your dream of since you were 13 years old of being a big famous professional wrestler was taken away from you. Not by choice of just something that the doctor said, you simply cannot do this anymore. I think it's really important to create something outside of wrestling that keeps you busy and keeps you working and keeps you creatively drived, because I think it's really important. But I could talk about Paige, like I say with anybody on these videos, for a very long time. I really do hope that we see more from Paige in the coming years, and of course, I just want to see her wrestle one more time. I know that's selfish, but health before wrestling. Am I right? Or am I right? That's going to do us for this week's The Legacy of. If you like this video, smash that thumbs up button over there. Just give it a nice little like so I know that I'm doing a good job here on Love Wrestling. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at JoshRobinson_00. Follow Love Wrestling on Twitter at LoveWrestlingCA. All the links for Love Wrestling and myself will be in the description below. And of course, if you haven't already, slide your mouse over to that big, huge red subscribe button and hit the bell so you know and you get notified of when Love Wrestling is dropping brand new videos. If you have some comments about Paige, please leave them in the comments below. I will be responding to every single comment that I can here on Love Wrestling and here on the Legacy of. Next Monday, it's the start of a 2-week special. We're talking Team Bestie. It starts next Monday with Lita, one of the greatest women's professional wrestlers of all time. You can catch that next Monday right here on the Legacy of. Until next time, friends, peace out.